On the sidelines of the ongoing IMF World Bank meetings, two members of Nigeria's finance team, Central Bank Governor Olayemi Cardoso and Minister of Finance Wale Edun, hosted a room full of foreign investors who lobbed questions on a wide variety of economic issues on the back of the reform agenda of the Tinubu administration. Arise business correspondent Rotus Oddiri sent in this report.
Now, to set the scene for the discussion that was to take place with foreign investors that were in the room here in D.C. with the CBN governor and the Minister of Finance, there was a presentation that took place to kick things off, and that was from Mohammed Sani Abdullahi, who is the Deputy Governor for Economic Policy at the Central Bank of Nigeria.
I'm just here to give a few slides regarding some of the reforms that have been ongoing in Nigeria over the last year and a half. To help us make sense of what might seem confusing from far away, but is actually quite a methodological process that the country is taking on to improve its economy and the life of its people. The reforms have been really on the back of very strong political will that's been exhibited right from the top by the president himself, and as much as possible in collaboration with the various stakeholders in the Nigerian economy.
So after the presentation was done, then we got into the questions. But it needs to be said, Deputy Governor Sani Abdullahi, popularly known as Dati Joe, is a solid member of the CBN team. He worked as a policy advisor under the Executive Office of the United Nations, former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. He was one of the core developers of the Sustainable Development Goals. He's been a Commissioner for Budget and Planning in Kaduna State. He's also an author on a book on how to help the poor. So he's very good with technical details, and this actually came into play later on during the Q&A from investors. And as I said, speaking of the Q&A, the first one was from a gentleman from Correspondent Capital Partners, an emerging markets specialist. So let's take a listen to that particular question on the CBN's reserves.
Hi there, thank you very much for the presentation. Nick Bradford from Kirkoswald. Two very quick questions. The first one, I think since the new administration came in, there's been a lot of talk on, well, we get the gross reserves, but what are the net reserves? And so I think there's been some talk around releasing that data. I'm just curious if there's a timeline on net reserves. Also, like your slide showed, a very impressive build-up in gross reserves, roughly $7 billion or $8 billion. Is there a level at which you don't need to build them any further? You know, in the recent times, there's been some FX pressure. There's been a kind of market narrative that there's been some sacrifice of the FX level in order to build reserves. So I'm just essentially asking, is there a level of gross reserves that you're aiming to achieve where you would be happier?
So that was Nicholas Bradford, who is an emerging market specialist with Correspondent Capital Partners. And it was two very important questions that he asked. The first one was on the CBN's actual net reserves. We all remember Arise News covered this under the last administration when we found out that they were borrowing money, that's the central bank, from asset managers in order to prop up the reserves. And there was this whole conversation about the net reserves. So what that means is you've got your gross reserves and your net reserves. When you back out your obligations from your gross reserves, you actually have what's really left, which is your net reserve. Think about it like your gross salary versus your net salary. Your gross salary is before taking out taxes and pensions and other deductions, and you get your net salary. So that is what Nicholas was asking. There still has not been any data on exactly what the net reserves are. That's the dollar reserves. And then secondly, you heard him say there's a narrative around the fact that the FX level has been sacrificed in order to build reserves. So the managed floats for the Central Bank of Nigeria has meant that they don't intervene as much as before in the markets, allowing market forces to determine what the FX rate is. And by not having to intervene in the market as much, you build up reserves. And he was asking, okay, how far do you want to build up these reserves? To what level? Now, beyond that, there were two more questions, but there's something I do want to note with the flow of questions and who they were directed to. So let's listen to two other questions that came after Nicholas Bradford.
There, Yakov Arnapolen from PIMCO. First of all, just commend you on all the reforms. Great to see everyone here in the room. Maybe echoing some of the other questions, the questions really are for the central bank. Just want to understand better your reaction function. I heard the comment that you're only 5% of the intraday liquidity in the market, but what's the thought process around intervention, dollar buying? How should we think about this going forward? Thoughts on effects. Thank you.
Can you elaborate on the $1 billion that was referred to in terms of supply to the market? So it's a bit of an extension of that former question, but also the level of dollarization in the banking sector. My understanding is that 40% of deposits are in dollars, and overall, I'm led to believe that there's still strong demand for dollars from local Nigerians. So despite the fact that the Naira is perceived to be cheap, it seems that there's still very strong demand for dollars and the conversion of Naira into dollars for savings. Can you speak to how you imagine that local Nigerians will regain confidence in the Naira and perhaps look to convert some of their own dollars back into Naira?
Now, there was a running theme here, which was kicked off by those first three questions. Every single one of them was for the CBN governor. And the takeaway from that, this was the theme for pretty much the rest of the evening. It showed that foreign investors are really concerned about the FX situation in Nigeria. Now, when I say concerned, I mean that they want to get more information. They've commended the Central Bank of Nigeria for the work that they've done. They've paid off the FX backlogs, gross reserves are rising, but they still need some more information. So FX dominated the conversation. In fact, they're actually going to play a clip here from the moderator of the event who actually said this.
Honourable Minister, I think you got away with that. Most of the questions for the governor, I think.
So you heard him say, Honourable Minister, you actually got away with that. He was referring to Wale Edun, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, saying you got away. I mean, it was meant to be a joke, but really what was remarkable was that you've got the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, and he didn't get that many questions. Majority of the questions were directed at Cardoso, the CBN, and the FX situation. And he actually did call on the Deputy Governor to come back and actually answer that technical question on the reserve situation. So here is his answer.
Okay, thank you very much. We always get the net reserves question. And I think what we've mentioned is that we are very committed to sharing that number very shortly. We are working very strongly on a data piece, as we've mentioned, with some of our IFIs, to ensure that we publish that number, not only announce it today, but we're able to publish a moving number as frequently as possible. And we had given a timeline earlier in the year and had said that hopefully by end of this year, first quarter, we will be able to share disaggregated reserves, and we are committed to that. So you will see that coming through very, very, very soon. The gross reserves are being built organically, mainly because we're just not defending the Naira as used to happen in the past, $1 billion every month just to defend the Naira. We're allowing the market as much as possible to set the level for the Naira, and we are building the buffers for just to improve that confidence and ensure that we have enough input cover. How much of it is enough? I think that we are looking at the conditions in the market. We're trying as much as possible to improve supply organically without the central bank having to put in money all the time. And so we're trying to get to a level where that stability is there without the central bank really, or the market depending on the central bank consistently. And we have had some significant amount of improvements in terms of flows from the remittance side. FPIs have put in a significant amount. The oil sector is from the production putting in more through PPT and all of that. So we're trying as much as possible to build out organically, but also we are keeping an eye on the market. So while you might see us intervene from time to time, we're trying as much as possible to ensure that the market is not dependent on the interventions of the central bank.
Issue of confidence in the market and, I beg your pardon, confidence of Nigerians in their currency. Clearly, a situation where interest rates have gone up, so we expect that, and it is happening, there'll be more interest in local currency instruments.
Clearly, the major macroeconomic reforms that were undertaken, the cost is, as we know, is front-loaded. You get inflation immediately, and the benefits are now spread over time. And in the meantime, you do have to keep going. And there has had to be, apart from domestic resource mobilization, apart from what we have done internally to raise government revenue and limit expenditure, we've also been in the market. Number one, for concessional financing. The World Bank, amongst others, has believed and bought into the sincerity and commitment to reform, and have supported us with development policy, operations, budgetary support.
There were a whole lot of questions that were asked that we couldn't get to because of time. However, some key takeaways. It would have helped to have more members of the financial team of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, particularly the chairman of the Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, also the chief financial officer of the NNPC, because there were more questions on taxes, non-oil revenues, and also the loan obligations of the NNPC. Also, it would have helped to have more specifics. There was a question on the errors and omissions for balance of payments that was also not addressed. But all in all, this is a testament to the reforms that Nigeria has undertaken and the positive feedback to those reforms. The room was full. Foreign investors are interested in Nigeria again, and it bodes well for the future for the country. Rotus, Oddiri, Arise News, Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much, Rotus, for bringing us all the updates, information from what seemed like a very insightful conversation with some critical stakeholders, foreign investors, some players, critical players in the finance sector in Nigeria and Africa and beyond. Thank you very much. We look forward to more reports from the ongoing annual meetings.